right, boys and girls, this is a heart-to-heart conversation today. Welcome again to Mindset Mornings, and here we are Monday, kicking off a new week. And from the folks in the room that are here and have been here, I've been witnessing a few things that tie back, by the way, to Chapter 8, which is awesome. I can't wait to hear what you guys bring to the table on Chapter 8. And here's what I'm at least observing through my perception. That not everybody is getting the reading done. And if they don't get the reading done, they stop showing up. Oh, I've fallen behind. And it's usually, by the way, a pattern of falling farther and farther behind. How many of you, by show of hands, in something in your life, maybe it's, reading a book like this where there's a daily measurable or something else. Maybe it's doing your calls, having your conversations, getting your follow-up done, where you have started to fall behind. Raise your paws if that's ever happened in your life. Okay? And then you start in this guilt of, okay, I've got 10 new today. I missed 5 from yesterday. I got to get those made up, and then I can do this. And then tomorrow, gosh, I didn't get all of this done and part of that done. Now I have 3 layers to follow up on, and you start digging a bigger and bigger hole. So I want to give you a model to break that pattern and change the psychology. And by the way, it's worked incredibly well for me, and it's shown up in my numbers, which is why I'm sharing it with you. Anytime I fall behind, let's say follow-up is a great one. I've got my tasks, I've got my follow-up, and Friday I didn't get them all done. I will do today's first. Get the current work done first before you go and start doing the makeup. In other words, if you're doing the DMD4 and there were a couple folks from last week's letters you didn't get done, we're not going to start today with those and attempt to get caught up. Instead, we're going to commit, you know what? It's a fresh day. We're doing today's work, and we get all of today's done. Then we can go back and start clearing up past due stuff. Okay. I'm going to tie this in later into one other model I'm going to share with you guys. And yet for you right now, how many of you just kind of can see in your mind's eye that if you're willing to mentally clear the deck and just start fresh today, you might have a better start to your second quarter of the year? Okay. So if you didn't get Chapter 8 read, you're going to kind of fake it today. Plus you can bring some Chapter 7 and 6 because there's still a lot of things that we didn't talk about in there that I want to make sure we do. And instead of attempting to get caught up, just grab Chapter 9 and read it for tomorrow. We're going to wrap this thing up Wednesday, and then we're going right into Susan Jeffers on Thursday if everything stays as is. I'll keep you guys in the loop. So with that being said, I got lots of things highlighted, yet I always like to hear from you first. What'd you guys take out of Chapter 8, where we are guaranteeing execution? What do you guys have?
I'm going to say in summary, we need to be better at these calibrated questions. We should actually sit and take this book and just write out the right questions we should be asking. Nothing is a why, it's a how. How am I going to do that? Get the person you're in negotiations with to be the one that helps you solve the problem. And that wasn't really Chapter 7. I think it was Chapter 6, but either way, it could be 7. Who knows? I'm only able to listen. I don't have the book.
He still absolutely anchored it in Chapter 8 as well, that there are 2 key questions we focus on. 2 very first words of every question sentence. What are they, Celeste?
How, not why, but how, and I don't remember the other one.
What?
Oh,
right. What was the second one? Those are 2 that turn on the creative portion of their brain and get them looking at things differently. So many, many, many times what I want to ask one of you that I'm coaching, why did that happen? Why did you do that? I will always shift to a what. Anytime there's a why hanging out there, you're going to hear me throw a lot of what's. It's rarely a why comes into the conversation. And even more powerful for this negotiation piece is that how. As you enter into negotiations, just think about this now for every single transaction where you are facilitating between, let's say you represent the seller. So the buyer's agent and the seller, that's who you're really going through, is asking how questions to that buyer's agent that they have to take back to their client and figure out a solution for you.
I want to add one more thing to this.
Yeah.
And this is my takeaway. I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but his choice of words to call these calibrated questions, in my mind, I'm thinking two things. One is you have a calibration of a bullet. Like they have a 44 or 20, whatever, a 22. Never mind. I want to say that that's what you hear when you're hearing about gunfire. And the other thing you hear is when you have a, what do you call it? When you're a sharpshooter, they have to calibrate the focus on their lens to the wind and the distance and all these things that they're calibrating the focus of what they're about to say. These words, calibrated questions, reminded me that those are the things we should be using best and most often. Did anybody else pick up on that?
Amen. You know, it's interesting. Someone else around here has talked constantly about question-driven conversations. Now we're learning how to ask even better questions.
Hey, Russ.
Yeah, go for it, Doug.
We're talking about questions. One thing one of my coaches suggested I do, this was years ago, and I did it for about 6 months, is every day to write out 50 questions. Every day, just 50 questions. And these were generally buyer-related questions, seller-related questions, or recruiting type questions. And now going through this book, it's occurring to me to go back through that exercise. And maybe it's not 50 questions a day. Maybe you write, 15 questions a day. It doesn't, the number's not important. It's the consistency. And yet to get our brain into asking those questions, because spontaneity is a conditioned reflex. And we've got to put those questions into our brain before they ever come out through our mouth. So the whole idea of just repetition and getting them in there, the hows and the whats, the yes and, though that's kind of something that's been jumping out to me, of maybe going back through that exercise.
Absolutely. One of the fun things with me is I have always shared and told you guys that the person who asks the most questions controls the conversation.
Yeah.
And the person talks the most dominates the conversation. And which one do we want to be?
Certainly want to be.
Yeah, we want to be in control, right?
Control.
Well, this one blew my mind and is now going to be a change into what I say. It's not the one who asks the most questions that controls the conversation. This is a throwback to the end of chapter 7. It's the one who's listening. The listener controls the conversation. You get to play listener when you ask these questions. And then let the silence do the heavy listening and wait. Now, as we're listening, I know we're listening for the language. What else in chapter 8 are we listening for? What are we going to do to be absolute negotiation ninjas?
I'm falling into the place of, yes, I haven't had a chance to read everything, but I'm still appreciating the parts that I can get. And, the listener controls the conversation. And then on page 179, not overusing their name, but a little bit of using their name humanizes it to the hostage and makes it less likely that he would be harmed. And using your own name creates the dynamic of a forced empathy. It's calling it the Chris discount. So that's, and there's more into it than that. Somebody can follow through. I haven't got it all. And just again, paying attention to their pronouns. So if we're listening, we're paying attention to their pronouns. We're seeing how they respond to the names, how they respond to our things. And then we know which is, we're not missing the strategic point, the turning point in the conversation. We
Yeah,
get to hear that turning point in the conversation, or as we're winning. And just really like, asking the how and the what questions. This is all excellent.
well, this section you're talking about using the name and the page before it, I definitely want to cover those, because using their name a little bit personalizes it for them, and then weaving in your name also humanizes you. So, I mean, he was talking about, came across someone and he immediately made a threat to him, and he just introduced himself. Hi, my name's Chris, and stuck his hand out. To someone that was all angry and all fired up, that disarmed him in the moment. And then again, using it, it's fun. Any discounts available? No, wrong question. Hi, my name's Chris. What's the Chris discount? How much fun you could have to play with that and watch what happens. Another one, though, on the page before, and man, it ties into so much. I've historically told you guys, don't say blah, blah, blah when blah will do. The reality is our subconscious knows the difference in volume of words. And there was what was called the Pinocchio effect that you're to be watching for. Liars use more words than truth tellers. How many times in the coaching world with you guys, I've asked a question that is a yes or no question, like, did you do your work? And I already know the answer is no, because the numbers you put up on the board. And there's all kinds of words that fill in. And I have to keep asking the question, and finally I get the one word, which is the truth. So liars use more words than truth tellers, and use far more third-party pronouns. They start talking about him, her, it, one, they, their, rather than I. And liars tend to speak in more complex sentences in an attempt to win over their suspicious counterparts. They're going blah, 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 with lots of words and big words. And we know subconsciously they're not telling the truth, which means someone that has this pattern as part of their lexicon, even when they're telling the truth, because they say blah, 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 when blah will do, they're undermining their credibility. So if that's you, that you tend to put a lot of words, I'm just going to keep preaching, shorten it down. You come across more authentic. You come across more real. And I want you guys to win these negotiations. What else are you picking up?
That ties into the page before, the 7-38-55 rule. 7% words, 38% tonality. I think we've talked about tonality a number of times here. It's not what you say, it's how you say it, the pauses, right?
Yep.
And if 55% of our communication is gone when we're on the phone, that begs the question of what you just said. We've got to become amazing listeners so that we can hear the tonality behind the words.
So there's one other piece on this I had to bring in, and I apologize to anybody in the room that happens to be at the big red box, but this one just chapped my flipping hide, because it was in the content that Camacho and I used to teach back when it was heartfelt and honest, this 55-38-7% rule. And when they rolled out the new version, one of their rules was if they couldn't find out where it came from, it couldn't be in the content. And so the 738 55% rule was stripped out. Here we literally have the reference to UCLA psychology professor who did the research. It's the truth. And I love that we now have the research-based facts when the founder, CEO, president of the other one said, nope, it's not true. We're going to strip it out. It actually exists. So we get to get back to it and making sure we're sharing it with people. Love it. What else you guys have?
When they were talking about this hostage negotiation with the reft couple, when he was taken hostage, one of the things that really resonated with me was that she was told, don't do anything other than ask questions. Like, how are we going to know that he's alive? All the questions that she was saying, she was told, don't do anything but ask questions. And it made the hostage holder have to think, how was he going to prove, whatever. And I thought, how many times and I'm using me, okay, I'll just use me, that I should have asked questions. I should have asked questions. I should have continued. Ask more questions. Ask more questions. I mean, if I could just say that would be a role play I need it desperately, because I present. I should be asking questions.
So gamify it, Celeste. Create in your mind that you are just going to have fun and play with this. And I'm saying this to Celestia, it's to all of you. The next deal you're negotiating that you write an offer on, play with this stuff. Because Celeste, again, I'm you. I'm old school sales. I'm able to close anybody. I mean, I've got that. And it's getting yeses that aren't necessarily authentic. I know somebody else in this room that I'm working with who's having trouble getting people to show up. They commit to an appointment and then they don't show up. Well, it's because he's getting an inauthentic yes because he's not asking enough questions. Number 2, negotiations. I love this. You submit an offer on the buyer side. Sellers come back. Ask a how question. Don't counter offer. Don't counter their counter. By the way, if you're on the selling side and you get an offer and it's way below asking, don't counter. Instead, come back with questions. So run this room for a second. My good friend, where did Robert Camacho go? There he is. Just because my battery's about to die, I'm going to go get my charge cord.
Let me pop in while he's getting his cord.
Go, Judy.
To what Celeste was talking about, another thing I was noticing in that is that if you keep asking those questions, people get tired too. And like the group started falling away, the ones that were left in the jungle. And I think maybe sometimes people will just give in to what your suggestion is because they're just tired of the whole process. So it seemed like
Good point.
It made it easier for Jose to escape.
Yeah, you can just kind of wear people down sometimes into your way of thinking.
Yeah.
And there is, it's not in this book, it's in a different book. It's I can't remember the technical phrase they call it, but it's when you get somebody so emotionally involved in a protracted conversation that they eventually say, okay, whatever. Let's just do it. And it's you just got to be patient with that.
It's like, never mind. I was about to use an analogy and I can't.
Yes, you can. Wear them down.
Yeah, when guys want something, it's like, oh, okay, fine.
Well, think about
my
this
gosh.
too. Let's just tie something else into that because page 185. It's a great example, Celeste, because the art of closing a deal is staying focused to the very end.
Yeah.
Okay, not giving up.
Let's do it.
You stay focused. You can wear them down.
Yeah. Parents
Don't
get
let
burned
your
down.
mind wander. Remain focused. Okay. So I want you to take this into those conversations going forward.
Well, and it's interesting. So bringing it back to that, we need to know who we are when we're going into something and what basically what our decisions are, because we need to stay focused on that part because um, we're talking about wearing down with words. Well, the Pinocchio effect on page 178 is it's liars tend to speak in more complex sentences in attempts to win over their suspicious counterparts. So if we're suspicious, we need to pay attention to the suspicion and to stick with what is it instead of listening to them and trying to sort it out so much. If the answer was no, the answer is still no. If the answer is yes, it's still yes. And that's how we get those are the things that we're going to need to do to protect ourselves. It says, it said, like Pinocchio's, who is it? W.C. Fields, baffling somebody with bullshit, or the Pinocchio effect. The number of words grew along with the lie. People who are lying are understandably more worried about being believed, so they work harder, too hard, as it were, at being believable. So, where stay with our gut, don't get lost in the story, and know who you are, so you're not the person getting taken in by the hostage taker, the liar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll take that for myself.
That comes with listening more than talking. That's how you will avoid that trap. What else you guys taking out?
So I had a thought, if you can hear me okay, regarding that 738-55 rule. How much of our conversation is text sometimes? And if we're only texting, we're only getting 7% of the message going across. And how horrible is that if it's only words?
More importantly on that, Jenny, you're actually in a negative, because what tone is someone else putting on that text?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, based on their historical programming, and just use the averages of our country, odds are, what tone are they putting on that text? Yeah. Negative. They're looking for what's wrong rather than looking for what's right. So we've talked about this in other rooms, so we'll share here. If you desire to be more effective and something truly shouldn't be texted, don't respond to a text with information. Respond to a text with, this topic is too important to be discussed on text. Can we get together on FaceTime?
Oh, that's good.
How often are you guys upping to a video contact versus phone, like Robert says, where we're giving up 55% of our communication tools, or just text? Up it at least to a phone call, and I always go after a video platform first. I want us to be able to see each other, to connect as human beings. Awesome job, Jana-Lee. What else you guys have?
In keeping with that, when I meet a new buyer client, I always do a Zoom first. I used to go to a Starbucks, but that kind of went by the wayside. So by doing a Zoom, I'm able to see their face and their relationship, because they're both on, so often they're in the same camera shot. And what I've discovered is my mission is always to ask them both the same questions, which sounds funny because you'd think, well, they're sitting together. One's going to give the answer for both of them. But the problem is, one wants to say all that they want to say, and the other one's saying nothing. And the one that's saying nothing is usually the one I want to hear from. So I'm basically pushing to get both of them to feel that I've heard them. That's the key, is to feel that they have been heard. And it is not easy, because some dynamics, some relationships, one is just always talking and the other one isn't.
Yeah, the intriguing thing that ties into, Celeste, is on page 170, 171. And this was a big aha for me. Few hostage takers and business deal makers fly solo. There's someone else behind the scenes that you don't know about. And I know we've been trained to ask who else needs to be involved in this conversation, who else is a decision maker. Now we get to work on upping those questions to how or what's, so we can really find out if there's someone else behind the scenes. I mean, how many of you, I was on the inspection side, have a first-time home buyer where dad is involved in the buying decision and showing up, and you think everything's awesome. You had your home inspector come through and everything was great. And all of a sudden dad shows up and the house is a piece of crap. Right? And how many have had a deal blow up with dad? Right? So finding out that ahead of time, who are the other people involved in the conversation? We get to up our game. So 2 minutes left. I want to have one other conversation today, since you guys are the ones that are committed to doing this. You're in the room, you're doing the work. Number one, should this be a yearly read for us?
Yeah.
Should this be one of those that gets in every calendar year? Raise your hands if you're a yes. Perfect.
Hey, Russ.
What other one should be? Yeah, Camacho, go.
I have not seen the book. I have seen it. I picked it up or read it. I believe there is a similar book focused on real estate. I'll do some research on that, see if I can actually find that.
Awesome.
Like a
So
version
here's
2.
my question for you, because we may be able to bring that in. Let me find I have been so busy this week. Where is my reading list? Because I want to get ideas. Who else? I know why I'm not finding it. You got to be in the right content. All right. Bingo. Got it. What other book should be a yearly read or darn close to it?
Ninja selling.
Thank you.
Ninja selling.
All right.
And I would say Gap and Gain is another good one.
Mhm.
Atomic Habits is awesome as well. All of these books have been excellent.
And I wasn't a reader.
And Radical Leap for me is always an end of year to really have some good emotional move towards leadership. So I have got a few of these highlighted as we build our reading lists going forward. So I want to make sure we covered that. So guys, love y'all. Glad you're here. 18. Think about this. This book started with 30, and here we are 18. So we got to start pushing back others. And Ryan, I see the book. So by all means, throw me a text. I'll add it to on the bottom of my page. I have lists. So again, throw me those via text. I will add them onto my list of ones to consider as we go forward filling our 2024 reading. All right. So appreciate y'all. Love y'all being here. And I am on to coaching. We will see you tomorrow with the ladies.